I'm Rebecca Harrison, 26 years old, and am standing here in handcuffs outside my dream lake house, watching my entire world collapse. 3 police cars are parked in my driveway, their red and blue lights cutting through the summer evening like knives. My parents are screaming accusations at me from behind the yellow crime scene tape. My brother Tyler is nowhere to be found, and my sister-in-law Ashley is sobbing crocodile tears for the cameras. Just this morning, they were all excited about our planned July 4th week celebration at my beautiful new lake house in upstate New York. Now the police are telling me that what they discovered in my basement will destroy everything I've ever worked for. Before we dive into this nightmare, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you've ever had family drama. And don't forget to subscribe because this story is about to take some wild twists that'll make you question everything you think you know about blood relations. Trust me, you won't believe what my own family was capable of doing. 3 months earlier, I was living what felt like a fairy tale. I had just purchased the most gorgeous Victorian lake house you could imagine, with money from my beloved grandmother Dorothy's inheritance. The 3-story beauty sat on 5 acres of pristine lakefront property, complete with a private dock and surrounded by dense woods that provided perfect privacy. The wraparound porch overlooked crystal-clear water that stretched for miles, and every sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold that took my breath away. When I called my family to share the exciting news, their reactions seemed genuinely enthusiastic. My parents, Margaret and William Harrison, had been married for 32 years and always presented themselves as the picture-perfect suburban couple. My father worked as an accountant for a prestigious firm downtown, while my mother managed a small but successful art gallery. They lived in the same house where Tyler and I grew up, a modest colonial in Westchester County that had seen better days. My older brother Tyler, 29, had married Ashley 3 years ago in what everyone called a whirlwind romance. She was 25, blonde, bubbly, and seemed to adore Tyler completely. They lived in a cramped apartment in Brooklyn while Tyler worked various sales jobs and Ashley waited tables at an upscale restaurant in Manhattan. Money was always tight for them, but they never complained publicly. The moment I mentioned hosting a family July 4th celebration, everyone jumped at the chance. "Oh, honey, that sounds absolutely wonderful," my mother gushed over the phone. "We've been so stressed lately with everything going on. A week at the lake is exactly what this family needs." Her enthusiasm seemed genuine, and I felt that warm glow of pride that comes from being able to provide something special for the people you love most. But looking back now, I should have paid more attention to Tyler's questions during that initial conversation. While everyone else was asking about the house itself, the amenities, the nearby town, Tyler kept focusing on practical details that seemed oddly specific. "How's the basement storage situation? Do you have good security systems? How often will you be staying there versus your apartment in the city?" At the time, I thought he was just being thoughtful, maybe planning some surprise for our week together. My mother's insistence on specific sleeping arrangements should have been another red flag. "I really think Tyler and Ashley should have the master guest suite on the 2nd floor," she declared during our planning call. "They need the space more than your father and I do." "Well, be perfectly comfortable in the smaller room." When I suggested that as the hosts, Tyler and Ashley should choose their own room, she became oddly persistent. No, I've already discussed it with them. They specifically requested that room because it has the best view of the lake. The weeks leading up to their visit were filled with increasingly strange phone calls. I'd answer and hear Tyler and Ashley talking in the background, their voices hushed and urgent. When they realized I was on the line, their tones would immediately shift to bright and cheerful. "Oh, hi, Becca. We were just discussing what food to bring for the barbecue." But their previous conversation had sounded nothing like menu planning. Ashley started asking unusual questions about my work schedule at the marketing firm where I'd been employed for the past 4 years. "So you'll be taking the whole week off, right? No emergency calls or anything that might drag you away." When I mentioned I might need to pop into the office midweek for a client presentation, she seemed almost panicked. "Oh no, you can't leave us. This is supposed to be family bonding time. Can't you reschedule?" The final warning sign came just 2 weeks before their planned arrival. I was at my parents' house for Sunday dinner when Tyler's phone rang. He stepped outside to take the call, but I could hear his voice through the thin walls. "Yeah, everything's set up perfectly. The location is isolated, no nosy neighbors, and shall never suspect anything until it's too late. When he came back inside, his face was flushed and he seemed agitated. Work call, he explained. But Tyler had been between jobs for the past month. As July approached, my excitement began mixing with an uncomfortable undercurrent of anxiety I couldn't quite explain. My gut was telling me something wasn't right, but my heart desperately wanted to believe that my family's enthusiasm was genuine. After all, these were the people who had raised me, supported me through college, celebrated my successes, and comforted me through failures. How could I suspect them of anything sinister? The inheritance from grandmother Dorothy had changed our family dynamic in ways I was only beginning to understand. She had left me significantly more money than anyone expected, along with some valuable jewelry and artwork that had been in our family for generations. While I had immediately offered to share everything equally among the family, their reactions had been mixed. Tyler had seemed grateful but oddly distant, while my parents had insisted I keep everything since grandmother had specifically named me in her will. But beneath their supportive words, I was starting to notice subtle changes in how they treated me. Conversations that used to flow naturally now felt stilted and careful. Family gatherings became tense affairs, where every topic seemed to carry hidden meaning. When I announced my lake house purchase, the congratulations came with undertones I couldn't quite identify but definitely didn't like. The truth about my family's resentment began unraveling when I discovered a box of documents hidden in my grandmother's bedroom while cleaning out her house. Dorothy Harrison had been meticulous about keeping records, and what I found painted a picture of family dynamics I had never fully grasped. Grandmother Dorothy's inheritance was substantially larger than anyone in the family had known. Beyond the $200,000 I had received, there were additional assets, stocks, bonds, a small property in Vermont, and valuable artwork that she had acquired over decades of careful collecting. The total estate value exceeded $600,000, making it a life-changing sum for our middle-class family. More shocking were the letters I discovered between my grandmother and her attorney. Dorothy had originally planned to divide everything equally between Tyler and me, but she had changed her will just 6 months before her death. The reason was documented in painful detail through her correspondence. Tyler had visited her repeatedly in her final year, not to spend time with her, but to ask for money. He had borrowed against his expected inheritance multiple times, pressuring an elderly woman who was fighting cancer to fund his increasingly desperate financial situations. The attorney's notes revealed that Tyler had actually threatened to contest the will if he didn't receive what he considered his rightful share as the eldest grandson. Dorothy had been devastated by his behavior, writing in one letter, "Tyler seems to see me only as a bank account rather than his grandmother." Meanwhile, Becca visits regularly, brings me groceries, sits with me during chemotherapy, and never asks for anything except my stories and my time. I arranged a family meeting to discuss sharing the inheritance more equitably, despite grandmother's clear intentions. The gathering at my parents' house started pleasantly enough, but the facade cracked quickly when real numbers were discussed. Tyler's reaction to learning the full scope of Dorothy's estate was explosive. "600,000? And she gave almost all of it to you." His face turned red with rage that seemed completely disproportionate to the situation. "This is completely unfair. As the eldest grandchild, I should have inherited everything." My mother's response was even more telling. Instead of mediating between her children, she immediately took Tyler's side. "Tyler does have a point, Rebecca. Has been struggling financially, and you have a good job and your own savings. Maybe grandmother wasn't thinking clearly in those final months." Her willingness to question Dorothy's mental capacity, when grandmother had been sharp as a tack until the very end, revealed depths of favoritism I had never recognized. The conversation deteriorated further when Tyler revealed the extent of his financial problems. He owed over $60,000 to various creditors, including some that he referred to only as private investors, with a nervousness that made my stomach turn. Ashley sat silently beside him, but her carefully composed expression couldn't hide the calculation in her eyes as she mentally tallied numbers. When I offered to pay off Tyler's debts and give them an additional $50,000 as an early inheritance, their responses were telling. Instead of gratitude, Tyler became angry that it wasn't more. $50,000? That's nothing compared to what you're keeping. You're being completely selfish, just like you've always been. Ashley nodded along with his accusations, adding, We had plans for that money, Becca, real plans that could change our lives. My father, who had remained quiet throughout most of the discussion, finally spoke up with words that chilled me to the bone. Maybe we should respect grandmother's wishes as written. She clearly had her reasons for the distribution. But his tone suggested he was merely playing peacemaker, not genuinely supporting my position. The meeting ended with Tyler storming out, Ashley following with a cold look in my direction, and my parents making awkward excuses about needing to think things over. As I sat alone in their living room afterward, I realized I had just witnessed something that would fundamentally change our family relationships. The mask of loving support had slipped, revealing resentment, entitlement, and a willingness to blame me for their financial problems. Over the following weeks, I learned more disturbing details about Tyler's situation. Through mutual friends, I discovered he had been gambling heavily for years, accumulating debts at casinos and through online poker sites. His private investors were actually loan sharks who charged exorbitant interest rates and had violent reputations for collecting on overdue accounts. Ashley's situation was equally troubling. She had been secretly meeting with divorce attorneys, planning to leave Tyler once his expected inheritance came through. Her marriage had been a calculated decision based on financial expectations that were now crumbling. The revelation explained her intense interest in the inheritance timeline and her desperation to maximize Tyler's share. My mother's behavior became increasingly strange as July approached. She would call with seemingly innocent questions about the lake house, but her real focus was always on my security arrangements, my neighbors, and my daily routines. When I mentioned installing a new alarm system, she seemed oddly interested in the specific type and access codes. The first direct betrayal came when I overheard Tyler talking to friends at a local bar. I had stopped by to meet a college friend for drinks and spotted Tyler in a corner booth, his voice carrying across the room in his excitement. "She thinks she's so generous offering me pocket change," he was saying. "But I deserve that money more than she does. I'm the one with real problems, real responsibilities. She just throws money around like it means nothing." His words hit me like physical blows. This was my brother, the person who had taught me to ride a bike, who had protected me from bullies in elementary school, who had been my partner in countless childhood adventures. Now he was sitting in a public place, disparaging my character to strangers and positioning himself as the wronged party in our family drama. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when my mother made a confession she probably thought was supportive. During a phone call about July 4th preparations, she said, "You know, Rebecca, I need to be honest with you. I've always felt like Tyler needed more attention and support because he struggled more in life. You've always been so capable, so independent. Sometimes I wonder if we failed him by not giving him the same advantages we gave you." Her admission revealed a lifetime of differential treatment I had been too naive to recognize. Tyler hadn't struggled more than me. He had been enabled to struggle by parents who constantly bailed him out of consequences while expecting me to handle my own problems. The inheritance issue wasn't really about money. It was about a family dynamic where Tyler's needs had always come first, and my success was seen as somehow taking away from his opportunities. The family arrived at my lake house on Saturday morning with enough luggage for a month-long expedition. Tyler and Ashley pulled up in a rental truck that seemed excessive for a week-long vacation, followed by my parents in their sedan loaded with coolers, bags, and equipment I couldn't identify. My first surprise came when Tyler introduced Marcus, a man I had never heard of before, who emerged from the passenger seat of their truck. "This is my buddy Marcus," Tyler announced casually, as if bringing unexpected guests to someone else's home was perfectly normal. "Has been going through a rough patch lately, and I thought a week at the lake might help him out. You don't mind, right? Has really handy with repairs and stuff, so he can help with any projects around the house." Marcus was a tall, heavily muscled man with multiple tattoos and the kind of hard stare that made me instinctively uncomfortable. His handshake was firm to the point of being painful, and he seemed more interested in examining my property than engaging in polite conversation. When I asked about his work, he gave vague answers about consulting and helping people solve problems. Ashley's behavior immediately struck me as odd. She spent the first hour after arrival walking through every room of the house, ostensibly admiring the decor but actually cataloging everything valuable. She asked pointed questions about the artwork, the electronics, and even the antique furniture I had inherited from various relatives. "This must all be worth a fortune," she commented, running her fingers over a vintage dining table. "Do you have insurance on everything? You know, in case something happens." The sleeping arrangements my mother had insisted upon suddenly made more sense when I saw how quickly Tyler and Ashley settled into the master guest suite. They immediately began rearranging furniture, moving the bed to face the window with a direct view of the driveway and front entrance. When I asked about the changes, Tyler claimed they wanted better natural light for morning wake-ups. My parents' choice of the smaller guest room seemed less about comfort and more about strategic positioning. Their room was located directly above the basement, and I noticed my father spending considerable time examining the floor, tapping on boards and testing for squeaks. When questioned, he explained he was just admiring the craftsmanship of the old house. The first act of sabotage occurred on Sunday morning when I went to take the family out for a boat ride on the lake. The engine of my beautiful 22-foot cabin cruiser turned over, but immediately died. When I tried again, nothing happened at all. Tyler volunteered to take a look, disappearing into the engine compartment for several minutes before emerging with oil on his hands and a concerned expression. "Looks like you've got some serious problems here," he announced. "The fuel lines are completely shot, and there's damage to the electrical system. This boat isn't going anywhere without major repairs." His diagnosis seemed suspiciously comprehensive for someone whose mechanical knowledge had never extended beyond changing oil in his car. Marcus offered to help examine the damage, and together they spent the morning pointing out various issues that would require expensive professional attention. "Boats are tricky," Marcus said with what I now recognize as practiced sincerity. "Saltwater damage can spread throughout the whole system before you even notice. You're lucky it died here instead of leaving you stranded in the middle of the lake." My mother's reaction to the boat situation was the first clear sign that something coordinated was happening. Instead of disappointment about missing our planned lake activities, she seemed almost relieved. "Oh well, these old boats are nothing but trouble anyway. We'll have more fun just relaxing on the shore." Her quick acceptance of a major change to our vacation plans struck me as completely out of character for someone who typically planned every detail of family gatherings. That evening, I caught Tyler making multiple trips to the basement with tools and equipment from his truck. When I asked what he was doing, he claimed to be organizing the storage space as a helpful surprise. "You've got such great potential down there for a workshop or exercise room. I'm just moving some boxes around to show you the possibilities." His explanation sounded reasonable, but the sounds coming from below suggested more complex activity than simple organizing. The second attack came on Monday, when I planned to drive into town for groceries and supplies. As I backed down the mountain road that connected my property to the main highway, I pressed the brake pedal and felt it sink uselessly to the floor. The car continued accelerating down the steep incline while I pumped frantically at brakes that had completely failed. Terror flooded through me as the speedometer climbed and the guardrails flashed past in a blur. Only my quick thinking to downshift the manual transmission and steer into a drainage ditch prevented what could have been a fatal crash. The car came to rest against a large boulder, dented and scratched but intact, while I sat shaking behind the wheel. Tyler and Marcus appeared within minutes, almost as if they had been watching and waiting. "Oh my God, Becca, are you okay?" Tyler's concern seemed genuine as he helped me from the car, but I noticed him exchanging glances with Marcus in a way that made my skin crawl. Marcus immediately took charge of examining the vehicle, sliding underneath with an expertise that contradicted his earlier claim to be unemployed. "Brake lines are completely severed," he reported. "This is really dangerous. Someone could have been killed." His tone suggested sympathy, but his eyes held something I couldn't quite identify. Ashley's reaction when we returned to the house sealed my growing suspicions. Her first concern wasn't my well-being, but rather whether I had been planning to leave them alone at the property. "You didn't tell anyone you were going into town," she said, her voice carrying an edge of accusation. "What if something had happened and we didn't know where you were?" My mother's response was even more telling. Instead of maternal concern about her daughter's near-death experience, she focused immediately on practical implications. "Well, I suppose we'll all be staying close to home for the rest of the week. No point in taking any more risks with unreliable transportation." Her matter-of-fact acceptance of what should have been a shocking accident revealed a level of preparation that chilled me to the bone. That night, I lay awake listening to sounds throughout the house that had nothing to do with normal vacation activities. Footsteps moved purposefully through hallways. Doors opened and closed with careful precision, and muffled conversations drifted through walls. When I crept to my window to investigate, I saw Marcus loading equipment from his truck into my boathouse under cover of darkness. The expensive electronic devices he was storing definitely didn't belong to my family, and their careful concealment suggested illegal activity. Whatever my brother had gotten involved with, he was now using my property as a base of operations without my knowledge or consent. The week I had planned as a joyful family reunion was becoming a nightmare of betrayal and criminal conspiracy. The break incident convinced me that my safety was in serious jeopardy, so I discreetly installed hidden security cameras throughout the house while my family was supposedly napping on Tuesday afternoon. The devices were small, wireless, and designed to be invisible when properly positioned. What they captured over the next 24 hours shattered any remaining illusions about my family's intentions. Tuesday night's footage revealed Tyler, Ashley, Margaret, and Marcus gathering in the kitchen after they thought I was asleep. The conversation I witnessed through my laptop screen was so shocking that I had to replay it multiple times to believe what I was hearing. My own mother was actively participating in planning what could only be described as my destruction. The accidents aren't working fast enough, Tyler was saying, his voice cold and calculating in a way I had never heard before. She's getting suspicious, and we're running out of time before someone starts asking questions. Ashley nodded agreement while casually eating ice cream from my freezer, as if discussing my potential demise was just another evening activity. Margaret's contribution to the conversation was the most devastating betrayal of all. We need to move to the more permanent solution we discussed. The inheritance money is just sitting in her accounts doing nothing productive. Tyler could invest it properly, maybe start the business he's always talked about. Her willingness to sacrifice her own daughter for Tyler's financial benefit revealed a level of favoritism that bordered on pathological. Marcus turned out to be more than just Tyler's friend. He was a professional criminal with extensive experience in fraud, theft, and what he euphemistically called problem solving. Through their conversation, I learned that Tyler had met him through gambling connections and owed him substantial money for both loans and services. My brother had essentially sold my safety to cover his debts. The surprise project Tyler had mentioned became crystal clear as they discussed their timeline. They were planning to frame me for criminal activity using evidence Marcus was planting throughout my property. The expensive electronics in my boathouse were stolen goods that would implicate me in a theft ring. Additional planted evidence would suggest drug trafficking, money laundering, and other serious crimes. Ashley's role in the conspiracy was particularly calculating. She had been documenting my daily routines, photographing my possessions, and creating a false narrative about my character that would support their frame job. I've been posting on social media about Becca's mysterious wealth and suspicious behavior, she reported proudly. When the police investigate, there will be plenty of evidence that people were already concerned about her activities. The most chilling revelation came when they discussed what would happen after my arrest. Tyler had already consulted with lawyers about inheritance procedures when family members are convicted of serious crimes. If I were imprisoned for an extended period, he could petition for control of my assets as next of kin. The lake house, my savings, even grandmother's jewelry would all become his to manage and eventually inherit. Margaret's hatred toward me ran deeper than I had ever imagined. During their planning session, she revealed years of resentment that had been carefully hidden. Rebecca has always thought she was better than the rest of us. Better grades, better job, better everything. Even grandmother loved her more. It's time she learned that being smart isn't enough when your own family is against you. The conspiracy included forging my signature on various documents that would support their criminal allegations. Ashley had been practicing my handwriting for weeks, perfecting the ability to create false evidence of illegal transactions. They had opened credit cards in my name, made suspicious purchases, and created a paper trail that would convince investigators of my guilt. Wednesday morning brought the third direct attack on my well-being. I woke up feeling violently ill after drinking my usual coffee, which someone had clearly poisoned with a substance that caused severe nausea, dizziness, and stomach cramps. As I vomited repeatedly and struggled to stand, my family gathered around with expressions of fake concern that now seemed transparently rehearsed. "Oh, honey, You must have eaten something bad. Margaret cooed while feeling my forehead with hands that had probably prepared the poison. Food poisoning can be so dangerous. Maybe you should stay in bed today and let us take care of everything. Her suggestion that I remain isolated and helpless while they continued their activities confirmed that the poisoning was intentional. Tyler took charge of the situation with suspicious efficiency, immediately suggesting they handle any urgent business I might have. Do you need us to make any phone calls, check your email, handle any banking stuff? His eagerness to access my personal information while I was incapacitated revealed another layer of their planning. Ashley documented my illness with her phone, taking photos and videos that she claimed were for insurance purposes but were obviously intended to support their narrative of my declining mental and physical state. We want to make sure we can prove how sick you got, just in case you need medical records later, she explained with false sympathy. Marcus spent Wednesday moving more equipment into my property while I was too sick to interfere. The hidden cameras captured him storing what appeared to be drugs, weapons, and additional stolen merchandise in my basement, garage, and outbuildings. He worked with the precision of someone who had done this type of framing operation before. The most devastating discovery came when I checked my online banking and credit card accounts that evening. Tyler had somehow gained access to my financial information and had been making transactions designed to look suspicious. Large cash withdrawals, payments to questionable businesses, and transfers to overseas accounts created a pattern that would definitely attract law enforcement attention. My mother's final betrayal was revealed through a phone call she made Wednesday night, which my hidden cameras captured perfectly. She was speaking to someone in law enforcement, providing detailed false information about my recent behavior. "I'm really worried about my daughter," she said with practiced maternal concern. "She's been acting strange lately, secretive, bringing home expensive things she can't afford on her salary. I think she might be involved in something illegal." As I lay in bed that night, still weak from the poisoning and reeling from the evidence of my family's complete betrayal, I realized they had been planning this destruction for months. Every loving gesture, every supportive phone call, every expression of family loyalty had been carefully crafted lies designed to position themselves for the ultimate theft of my entire life. Thursday morning marked the beginning of my counterattack, though I knew I had to proceed carefully to avoid alerting my family to my awareness of their conspiracy. My first stroke of luck came in the form of Jake Morrison, my nearest neighbor, who appeared at my door with genuine concern about the recent accidents around my property. Jake was a retired police detective who had moved to the lake for peaceful retirement but maintained the sharp instincts that had made him successful in law enforcement. He had noticed the unusual activity at my house, the strange vehicles coming and going at odd hours, and the general atmosphere of tension that had replaced the quiet tranquility of our lakeside community. "I hope you don't mind me checking in," he said, his experienced eyes taking in details I hadn't even noticed. "But I've been watching some concerning activity around your place. That brake line failure wasn't an accident, and neither was the damage to your boat. Someone's deliberately targeting you." His direct approach was both alarming and oddly comforting. Jake's professional background made him immediately suspicious of Marcus, whose criminal history and behavior patterns were apparently obvious to someone trained in recognizing such things. "That guy's got prison tattoos and the kind of nervous energy that comes from active illegal activity," Jake explained. "He's not here for a family vacation, he's here for a job." Together, we began investigating Tyler's financial situation more thoroughly. Jake had contacts in law enforcement and finance who could access information I couldn't obtain alone. What we discovered was far worse than I had imagined. Tyler owed money to multiple criminal organizations, had defaulted on several legitimate loans, and was facing threats of violence if he didn't pay up soon. Ashley's affair with Marcus became apparent through surveillance photos Jake had taken during his own investigation. The two were meeting secretly during supposedly innocent walks around the property, engaging in passionate encounters while Tyler remained oblivious. Her marriage had become nothing more than a cover for her real allegiance to Marcus and his criminal operations. Jake helped me secure additional evidence by improving my hidden camera system and adding professional-grade audio recording equipment. The new surveillance revealed even more damning conversations, including detailed discussions of how they would dispose of my body after the frame job was complete. The casual way they discussed my murder made it clear this wasn't just about money anymore. They genuinely wanted me dead. My first counterattack involved secretly documenting all the planted evidence Marcus had hidden on my property. Jake photographed everything while wearing gloves to avoid disturbing fingerprints that would prove Marcus had placed the items. We also discovered that much of the stolen merchandise could be traced back to specific crimes, making Marcus' presence on my property a serious liability for him. The revelation about my mother's embezzlement came through Jake's investigation into her employment at the art gallery. She had been stealing money for years, using her position to sell pieces from inventory and pocket the proceeds. The amounts were substantial enough to constitute felony theft, and she had been using Tyler's gambling debts as justification for her crimes. Tyler's desperation became more apparent as his creditors began applying pressure. Phone calls to the house increased, with voices making barely veiled threats about consequences for continued non-payment. My brother was trapped between criminal organizations that wanted their money and a family conspiracy that was taking longer than expected to produce results. Thursday evening brought the fourth attack when Tyler and Marcus staged a break-in designed to steal my important documents and identification. They had carefully planned the incident to occur while they supposedly had alibis elsewhere, but my hidden cameras captured their entire operation. The theft of my passport, birth certificate, and other essential documents was intended to prevent me from fleeing or accessing my assets when their frame job reached completion. Jake's intervention proved crucial when he appeared during the fake burglary, forcing Tyler and Marcus to maintain their charade while knowing they were being watched by someone with law enforcement experience. "Looks like you folks had some trouble while you were out," he said, with deliberate ambiguity that left them uncertain about how much he had witnessed. My parents' reaction to the supposed break-in revealed their involvement in the planning. Instead of normal parental concern about my safety and security, they immediately focused on whether anything valuable had been stolen. Margaret was particularly interested in whether my financial documents were secure, asking pointed questions about bank statements and investment records. The discovery that I had backup copies of all my important documents hidden in Jake's house came as a devastating blow to their timeline. They had counted on the theft creating chaos and vulnerability that would make me easier to frame. Instead, I maintained access to everything I needed while they remained unaware that their crime had been thoroughly documented. Jake's connections in the financial industry helped us trace the suspicious transactions that had been made in my name. The trail led directly back to Tyler and Ashley, who had been using stolen personal information to create false evidence of criminal activity. Their clumsy attempts at digital fraud would be easy to prove once law enforcement became involved. Friday morning brought escalating desperation from my family as they realized their timeline was slipping away. Tyler's creditors were threatening immediate action. Ashley's relationship with Marcus was becoming harder to hide, and Margaret's embezzlement was about to be discovered by her employers during a routine audit. The pressure led to increasingly reckless behavior that Jake and I documented carefully. Phone calls became more frequent and less coded, their movements around my property became more obvious, and their treatment of me shifted from fake concern to barely concealed hostility. They were running out of time and options, making them more dangerous but also more likely to make mistakes. Friday afternoon brought the discovery that turned my blood cold and confirmed my worst fears about my family's intentions. While pretending to rest in my bedroom, I watched through my laptop as Marcus made his final preparations in my basement, carefully arranging planted evidence that would destroy my life forever. The illegal substances he positioned throughout my basement storage area were serious drugs that would result in trafficking charges and decades in prison. Packages of cocaine, heroin, and synthetic drugs were hidden behind boxes and inside containers, positioned to look like I had been operating a significant distribution network from my property. The stolen electronics were just the beginning of the evidence designed to implicate me in multiple criminal enterprises. Marcus had also planted stolen artwork, jewelry, and other high-value items that could be traced back to specific burglaries throughout the region. My beautiful lake house was being transformed into what appeared to be a criminal headquarters. Most devastating were the fake financial documents that had been created to support allegations of money laundering. Ashley had spent weeks preparing false records that showed large cash transactions, suspicious international transfers, and connections to known criminal organizations. The paper trail was sophisticated enough to convince investigators without deeper analysis. Tyler's role in the frame job went beyond just providing access to my property. He had been systematically gathering personal information about my daily routines, my work colleagues, my friends, and anyone who might provide an alibi or character reference. This information was being used to anticipate and counter any defense I might attempt. The anonymous tip to police was scheduled for Saturday morning, giving Marcus time to complete his evidence planting while ensuring my family would have solid alibis. They had planned a group trip into town for breakfast at a popular restaurant, creating multiple witnesses to their whereabouts when the discovery was made. Ashley's social media campaign had been building for weeks, creating a public narrative about my suspicious behavior and newfound wealth. Posts about my expensive lake house, my unusual work schedule, and her concerns about my activities were designed to support law enforcement suspicions when they began investigating. Margaret's contribution included character assassination through her network of friends and community members. She had been spreading rumors about my mental stability, my financial management, and my relationships, creating a foundation of public doubt about my integrity that would make criminal charges seem believable. The plan included disposing of my body in the lake, making it appear that I had committed suicide when faced with inevitable arrest and prosecution. Marcus had obtained weights and chains that would ensure my body remained hidden in the deepest part of the lake, while Tyler had prepared a suicide note using Ashley's samples of my handwriting. Jake's discovery of their full plan came through enhanced surveillance equipment he had positioned around the property. The audio recordings captured detailed discussions of timing, methodology, and contingency plans that revealed the sophisticated nature of their criminal conspiracy. My second ally emerged when Jake contacted his former colleague Sarah Chen, who now worked as a prosecutor in the local district attorney's office. Sarah's review of our evidence confirmed that my family was engaged in serious criminal activity that extended far beyond simple fraud or theft. Sarah's legal expertise helped us understand the implications of my family's crimes and the strength of the evidence we had gathered. The conspiracy charges alone would result in significant prison time for all participants, while the individual crimes of murder, fraud, and theft would add additional decades to their sentences. The revelation that police had already received preliminary reports about suspicious activity at my property created an urgent timeline for our counteraction. Sarah's contacts in law enforcement revealed that an investigation was indeed underway, though it was still in early stages and focused on me as a suspect rather than a victim. Friday evening brought Tyler's most desperate attempt to access my financial accounts. Using information gathered throughout the week, he tried to transfer large sums to accounts controlled by Marcus. Only the security measures Jake had helped me implement prevented the theft of my entire inheritance. Ashley's relationship with Marcus reached a turning point when she discovered his plan to eliminate her along with me after the frame job was complete. Her value to the conspiracy ended once my money was secured, and Marcus had no intention of sharing the proceeds with unnecessary partners. The fake suicide note Ashley had prepared revealed the depth of psychological manipulation they had planned. Using intimate knowledge of my personality, fears, and writing style, she had created a document that would convince investigators and family friends that I had taken my own life rather than face justice for crimes I didn't commit. Margaret's final betrayal came through her conversations with Marcus about disposing of my personal belongings after my death. She had already selected items she wanted to keep as mementos while planning to sell anything of value to maximize their profit from my destruction. The discovery that Tyler had been stealing my personal items throughout the week, gradually removing things I would miss only if I survived long enough to notice, revealed the completeness of their planning. Nothing about my life or death had been left to chance in their meticulously crafted conspiracy. Saturday morning arrived with the devastating realization that my family's frame job was already in motion and might be unstoppable. The anonymous tip Marcus had called in the night before had triggered a police response that was heading toward my property, armed with search warrants and expectations of finding exactly what my family had planted. Sarah's urgent phone call at dawn confirmed my worst fears. "Rebecca, you need to get out of that house immediately. The police are en route with warrants based on credible evidence of drug trafficking and stolen property. Someone has built an incredibly convincing case against you." The panic in her voice reflected the gravity of my situation. Jake's attempt to help me escape was thwarted when Tyler and Marcus blocked the driveway with their vehicles, claiming they were concerned about my erratic behavior and wanted to keep me safe until authorities arrived. Their fake concern masked the reality that they needed me present when police arrived to make their frame job complete. The first betrayal of the day came when Ashley approached me with crocodile tears, claiming she wanted to help me understand what was happening. "Becca, I found some really disturbing things in your basement. I think someone might be using your house for illegal activities. We need to call the police right away." Her performance was Oscar-worthy in its false sincerity. Marcus' revelation of their ultimate plan came with the confidence of someone who believed victory was assured. During a moment when he thought no one else could hear, he explained that my accidental death during police arrest would solve everyone's problems permanently. "Cops get nervous around drug dealers," he said with a cold smile. "Sometimes things go wrong during arrests." The second betrayal revealed itself when my father, who had remained largely quiet throughout the week, finally showed his true allegiance. Instead of protecting his daughter from obvious danger, he actively participated in restraining me when I tried to call for help. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Rebecca. Accept responsibility for your actions." Tyler's gambling associates chose that morning to arrive at my property, demanding immediate payment of debts that had reached critical levels. Their presence created chaos that interfered with the carefully orchestrated frame job, but also added genuine danger as armed criminals surrounded my home. Ashley's attempt to seduce Jake backfired spectacularly when she underestimated his integrity and investigative skills. Her offer to share information about my criminal activities in exchange for his protection revealed the depth of her desperation and the fragility of their conspiracy. The third betrayal came from Margaret, who contacted my employer with false allegations about my professional conduct. Her report to Human Resources about suspicious activities, unexplained wealth, and erratic behavior was designed to destroy my career and reputation, even if their criminal frame job failed. Police sirens in the distance confirmed that our time for counteraction had run out. The evidence planted by Marcus would be discovered within minutes, beginning a legal process that could take months or years to unravel. Even if I eventually proved my innocence, the damage to my life would be irreversible. Jake's desperate attempt to contact his former colleagues in law enforcement was complicated by the fact that the investigating officers didn't know him personally and had no reason to trust his claims about planted evidence. The anonymous tip had been crafted to seem credible and urgent, making skeptical evaluation unlikely. Sarah's revelation that the case against me included witness statements from family members was the most devastating blow of all. Tyler, Ashley, and Margaret had all provided detailed accounts of my suspicious behavior, my connections to criminal associates, and their growing fears about my activities. Their united front would be difficult to challenge. The fourth betrayal emerged when I discovered that my own mother had been recording our private conversations throughout the week, editing them to create false evidence of criminal admissions and threatening behavior. Her manipulation of maternal intimacy to gather incriminating material revealed a level of calculated evil I had never imagined possible. Marcus' backup plan became apparent when additional associates arrived to ensure their criminal evidence remained in place regardless of police actions. They were prepared to use violence to maintain their frame job, making my survival dependent on factors completely beyond my control. The final moments before police arrival brought the crushing realization that everything I had worked for, everyone I had trusted, and every assumption about family loyalty had been systematically destroyed by the people who claimed to love me most. Standing in my beautiful lake house surrounded by enemies wearing familiar faces, I understood that my old life was over regardless of what happened next. Tyler's last words to me before the police broke down my door revealed the complete absence of familial love that had motivated their conspiracy. "You never deserved any of this anyway. Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to lose everything." His satisfaction at my impending destruction was the final proof that my brother had been replaced by someone driven purely by greed and resentment. The moment police officers entered my property, Jake implemented our carefully prepared counterattack with the precision of a military operation. Instead of fleeing or hiding, I immediately identified myself as the homeowner and requested to speak with the lead investigator about planted evidence and a criminal conspiracy against me. Detective Maria Rodriguez's initial skepticism transformed into professional interest when I provided her with Jake's credentials and our extensive documentation of criminal activity. The hidden camera footage showing Marcus planting evidence was particularly compelling, especially since it included clear shots of his face and detailed records of timing that could be corroborated with phone records. Sarah's arrival at the scene with legal documentation provided crucial support for our claims about the frame job. As a prosecutor familiar with both criminal law and evidence procedures, her presence legitimized our allegations and ensured that the investigation would examine the possibility of planted evidence rather than simply assuming my guilt. The first breakthrough came when Detective Rodriguez ordered Marcus to remain present during the search rather than allowing him to leave as he had planned. His nervous behavior and attempts to guide officers away from certain areas of my basement immediately raised professional suspicions about his involvement in placing the discovered contraband. Tyler's reaction to our counterclaim revealed the fragility of their conspiracy. Instead of maintaining the composed concern of an innocent family member, he became agitated and defensive, making statements that contradicted earlier claims about his knowledge of my activities. His desperation to ensure police found specific pieces of evidence exposed his involvement in placing them. Ashley's breakdown under Detective Rodriguez's questioning provided the first crack in their united front. When confronted with evidence of her affair with Marcus and her role in creating false social media narratives, she began distancing herself from the conspiracy by claiming she had been manipulated and threatened into participation. Margaret's embezzlement became relevant evidence when Sarah connected it to the family's financial motivations for framing me. The thousands of dollars she had stolen from her employer over the years established a pattern of criminal behavior that supported our claims about their willingness to commit serious crimes for money. The recording equipment Jake had installed captured Marcus' phone conversations with criminal associates, providing law enforcement with evidence of ongoing illegal activities that extended far beyond their conspiracy against me. His connections to drug trafficking, stolen property, and money laundering created federal law enforcement interest in the case. Tyler's gambling debts became crucial evidence when Detective Rodriguez traced the specific criminal organizations he owed money to. The timeline of threats and payment deadlines corresponded perfectly with the planning period for their frame job, establishing clear motive for their desperate actions against me. Ashley's decision to cooperate with law enforcement in exchange for reduced charges provided detailed testimony about the conspiracy's planning and execution. Her intimate knowledge of their methods, timeline, and intentions gave investigators everything needed to build cases against the other participants. The discovery of forged documents in Tyler's possession proved their intent to commit identity theft and financial fraud beyond the planted evidence. Ashley's samples of my handwriting, combined with practice documents and fake identification papers, demonstrated sophisticated planning for multiple serious crimes. Marcus' arrest on existing warrants unrelated to our case provided investigators with leverage to secure his cooperation in exposing Tyler and Margaret's roles. Facing potential life imprisonment for his extensive criminal history, he began providing detailed information about their conspiracy in exchange for plea consideration. Margaret's reaction to learning about Ashley's cooperation revealed the depth of her involvement and the calculated nature of her betrayal. Instead of maternal concern about potential consequences, she immediately began trying to destroy evidence and distance herself from the conspiracy. The suicide note Ashley had prepared using my forged handwriting became powerful evidence of their intent to commit murder disguised as self-harm. The level of psychological manipulation required to create such a document demonstrated premeditation that elevated their conspiracy to capital crime levels. Tyler's attempt to flee when he realized their conspiracy was collapsing resulted in additional charges and provided final proof of his guilt. His abandoned truck contained stolen merchandise, falsified documents, and communication records that connected him to multiple criminal enterprises. The resolution of criminal charges against my family members provided complete vindication of my innocence and established the scope of their betrayal. Tyler faced decades in prison for conspiracy, fraud, theft, and attempted murder. Margaret was charged with embezzlement, conspiracy, and accessory to attempted murder. Ashley received reduced sentences in exchange for her cooperation, but still faced significant prison time. Marcus' conviction on multiple federal charges ensured he would spend the rest of his life in prison, eliminating any future threat to my safety. His extensive criminal network was also disrupted through information he provided, resulting in dozens of additional arrests and prosecutions. The months following my family's arrest brought a complex mixture of relief, grief, and gradual healing that changed my understanding of what family really means. Tyler was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. Margaret received 15 years for embezzlement, conspiracy, and her role in planning my destruction. Ashley's cooperation earned her a reduced sentence of 8 years, though her betrayal had been just as complete as the others. Marcus' life sentence without possibility of parole ensured that the most dangerous member of their conspiracy would never again threaten anyone's safety. His extensive criminal network was dismantled through prosecutions that followed his arrest, making our community and many others significantly safer from organized criminal activity. The recovery of my stolen assets took several months of legal proceedings, but eventually every penny they had taken was returned along with substantial damages for the emotional trauma and reputation damage they had caused. The lake house, which had been contaminated by their criminal activity, required extensive cleaning and renovation to remove all traces of their presence. Jake Morrison's transition from neighbor to trusted friend to romantic partner happened gradually and naturally over the months of healing. His protective instincts, professional competence, and genuine caring provided exactly the kind of stability I needed while rebuilding my sense of trust in relationships. Our shared experience of confronting criminal behavior created a bond based on mutual respect and understanding. Sarah Chen's legal expertise proved invaluable not just during the crisis, but throughout the lengthy process of criminal prosecutions and civil litigation. Her friendship became one of the most important relationships in my new life, providing both professional guidance and personal support as I navigated the complex emotions of family betrayal and recovery. The therapeutic process of healing from such comprehensive betrayal required professional counseling and significant time for emotional processing. Learning to distinguish between healthy family relationships and toxic manipulation became essential for my ability to form new connections and trust my own judgment about people's intentions. My decision to transform the lake house into a retreat center for survivors of family betrayal and domestic abuse gave new meaning to the property that had been intended as my destruction. The beautiful Victorian home became a place of healing and empowerment, helping other people rebuild their lives after experiencing similar trauma. Margaret's eventual admission of guilt, delivered through a letter from prison, provided some closure, though it could never repair the relationship we had lost. Her explanation of lifelong jealousy, favoritism toward Tyler, and resentment about my success revealed psychological issues that had probably affected our family dynamic for decades without my awareness. Tyler's complete lack of remorse, even after conviction and imprisonment, confirmed that the brother I thought I knew had never really existed. His continued insistence that he deserved my inheritance, and his anger about the consequences of his criminal behavior, demonstrated a level of narcissism and entitlement that made reconciliation impossible. Ashley's attempts to maintain contact and seek forgiveness were complicated by the calculating nature of her betrayal. While I could understand that she had been manipulated by both Tyler and Marcus, her active participation in planning my murder made any relationship impossible to salvage. The community support I received during and after the crisis restored my faith in human goodness and the possibility of authentic relationships. Neighbors, friends, colleagues, and even strangers who learned about my situation provided encouragement, practical help, and emotional support that demonstrated how families should actually function. Jake's proposal came exactly 1 year after the July 4th week that had nearly destroyed my life. Standing on the dock where Marcus had planned to dispose of my body, he offered a future based on love, trust, and mutual protection that represented everything my original family had failed to provide. Our wedding, the following spring, brought together a chosen family of people who had earned their place in my life through actions rather than blood relationships. Jake's children from his first marriage, Sarah and her family, neighbors who had become friends, and colleagues who had supported me through the crisis created the kind of loving community I had always thought families were supposed to be. The retreat center's success in helping other survivors rebuild their lives provided ongoing purpose and meaning that transformed my trauma into a source of strength for others. Each person who found healing and empowerment through our programs represented a victory over the forces that had tried to destroy me. My relationship with money and material possessions changed fundamentally after learning how these things had motivated my family's betrayal. While I maintained financial security and enjoyed comfortable living, I focused primarily on experiences, relationships, and service that provided deeper satisfaction than wealth accumulation. The annual July 4th celebration at the lake house became a tradition for my chosen family, marking not just independence from tyranny, but personal liberation from toxic relationships and the discovery of authentic love. Each year, we honored both the original meaning of the holiday and our own journey from betrayal to healing. 3 years after the crisis, I can honestly say that losing my original family was ultimately a gift that allowed me to discover what real love and loyalty actually look like. Jake's unwavering support, Sarah's friendship, and the community of people who have become my true family provide security and happiness that my blood relatives never offered. The most profound lesson from this experience is that family is defined by choice, commitment, and love, rather than genetics or legal relationships. The people who stand by you during crisis, who protect you from harm, and who celebrate your success without resentment are your real family regardless of their biological connection to you. Sometimes the family you choose is infinitely stronger, more loyal, and more loving than the one you were born into. Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted leads to discovering everything you actually needed. And sometimes the worst betrayal in your life becomes the pathway to the greatest blessing you never imagined possible. Have you ever had to cut ties with toxic family members for your own safety and well-being? Or maybe you've been lucky enough to find a chosen family that supports and loves you unconditionally? Share your experiences in the comments below because your story might help someone else who's struggling with similar family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find it. Subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and finding strength, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they're not alone in dealing with family toxicity. Thank you for watching, and remember that you deserve relationships built on genuine love and respect, not manipulation and greed. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and never be afraid to choose your own happiness over toxic loyalty.